What wondrous love is this, oh my soul, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this, oh my soul. What wondrous love is this that caused the Lord of bliss to bear the dreadful curse for my soul, for my soul, to bear the dreadful curse for my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down, sinking down. When I was sinking down beneath God's righteous frown, Christ laid aside his crown for my soul, for my soul. Christ laid aside his crown for my soul. To God and to the Lamb I will sing, I will sing. To God and to the Lamb I will sing. To God and to the Lamb who is the great I am. While millions join the theme, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. While millions join the theme, I will sing. And when from death I'm free, I will sing, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing on. And when from death I'm free, I'll sing and joyful be. And through eternity, I'll sing on, I'll sing on. And through eternity, I'll sing on.
Welcome to our Good Friday Tenebrae service. In this thoughtful gathering, we will ponder the events of this painful and holy day, walking with Jesus on the road to the cross. We will read the gospel stories and we will reflect, and as we read, we will extinguish these candles one by one. In our culture, we struggle to hold space for grief. Today, we will not rush past the pain to Easter morning. Let us allow the growing darkness to be a visceral reminder, a physical representation of our growing sorrow. As you engage from your home, I invite you to turn out the lights and allow the only light to come from your screen. This will allow each of us to participate as best we can in the growing darkness. At the end of our time, we will read Psalm 22, and we will extinguish the Christ candle. Then a crash will symbolize the stone closing Christ in the tomb, and we will be left in darkness and in silence. I encourage you to let this silence linger. Allow yourself to remain in the moment. Give yourself space to feel whatever emotions arise. And when you are ready to transition from this space, do so gently. You may quietly get up and walk to another room before breaking the silence. Give yourself and anyone you are participating with the opportunity to move lightly from this space. Lord Jesus, speak to us tonight as we join you on your journey to the cross. May we comprehend the great depth of your love. May we find ourselves in the story. And may we know you and your presence more deeply in this journey.
When it was evening, he took his place with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to him one after another, "Surely not I, Lord?" He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi?" He replied, "You have said so."
Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly, I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And all the disciples said the same.
Because we are all betrayers, taking silver and eating body and blood and asking, "Is it I?" and hearing him say yes. It would be simple for us all to rush out and hang ourselves. But if we find grace to cry and wait after the voice of mourning has crowed in our ears clearly enough to break our hearts, he will be there to ask us each again, "Do you love me?"
Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed a third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners."
Go to dark Gethsemane, feel the tempter's power. Your Redeemer conflict see, watch with him 1 hour. Turn not from his griefs away, oh, turn not from his griefs. Learn of Jesus Christ to pray, oh, turn not from his griefs. See him at the judgment hall, beaten, bound, arraigned. Oh, the wormwood and the gall, the pains his soul sustained. Shun not suffering and shame, oh, shun not suffering. Learn of Christ to bear the cross, oh, shun not suffering. Calvary's mournful mountain climb, adoring at his feet. Mark that miracle of time, God's sacrifice complete. It is finished, hear him cry, oh, it is finished, done. Learn of Jesus Christ to die, oh, it is finished, done. Oh, it is finished, hear him cry, oh, it is finished, done. Learn of Jesus Christ to die, oh, it is finished, done.
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way?" In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, "This fellow said, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." "You have said so," Jesus replied. "But I say to all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" "He is worthy of death," they answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?"
Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. "You also were with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But he denied it before them all. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." He denied it again with an oath, "I don't know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken, "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly.
Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting in the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him!" When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified.
Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand. Then they knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. And sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head they placed the written charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 rebels were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross and we will believe in him. He trusts God. Let God rescue him now, if he wants him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the rebels who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him.
It will be the last temptation of Christ, and the greatest. The first temptation ended on a foreboding note. When the devil had finished all this tempting, he left him until an opportune time. The words foreshadow a sequel to that great duel in the wilderness, but the second grab for Jesus' soul would have to be more strategically planned than the first. Satan knows this. The setting would have to be different, starker, more desolate, and the timing, it would have to be different too. It would have to be a more opportune time. The time of Satan's first temptation was when Christ's ministry was just beginning to bloom, when all looked hopeful. He knows if he comes again, it would have to be a time when the bloom was off the branch, when all hope was gone. That time is now. The ministry is dead, and so almost is Jesus. He has suffered the loss of sleep, the loss of blood, and the loss of his friends. He was never more tired than he is now, never more weak, never more alone. Satan knows the time is opportune. He has watched from the corners of the upper room and waited in the shadows of Gethsemane. He has witnessed the betrayals and the trials, the mocking and the beating. He knows. The soul of Christ has never been more ripe for the picking or more within his reach. So he comes this one last time. The setting for this final temptation is a chalky knoll just outside Jerusalem's north wall, scooped with shallow caverns. The round hill looks grim and ominous and well fitted to its nickname, Golgotha, the place of the skull. The skull stares away from the city, its stone gaze unmoved by the vultures and the crows and the other winged scavengers that stilt across its brow, pecking around for the remains of the dead. 3 vertical beams are staked on the top of that hill, standing tall and unshaded in the morning sun, like soldiers after revelry, standing at attention, awaiting the day's assignment. The assignment for today is 2 robbers and a religious zealot. This unlikely trio has led an unceremonious procession through the narrow city streets, shouldering their crossbeams as they stumbled over cobblestones. Now that they have trudged to the top of Golgotha, they drop their wooden beams. The prisoners are exhausted, slick with sweat, fresh blood oozing from their wounds. One by one, the prisoners are muscled to the ground and stretched across their crossbeams. The first thief struggles, but a handful of soldiers subdues him, sitting on him as the spiker does his work. He screams as the spikes impale his wrists, 2 wraps on one arm, 2 more on the other. Seeing this, hearing this, the other prisoner struggles even more desperately, but the guards subdue him too. 2 wraps, then 2 more, and the uprising is put down. They have saved Jesus for last. The soldiers stretch his arms across the coarse-grained wood. A soldier straddles his chest, 2 others straddle his arms, 2 others his legs. They're used to the fitful resistance of condemned men, but this condemned man throws no fit, offers no resistance. The spiker bends on one knee, the pockets of his leather apron bulging with nails, an iron-headed mallet filling his hand. He places the spike just below Jesus' wrist. The clank of metal echoes off the stone walls. 1 sharp rap to penetrate the arm, 1 more to penetrate the wood. 1 rap on the other arm, then another, and the job is done. One by one, the crossbeams are lifted into position. 4 soldiers lift Jesus' crossbeam and 2 steady his feet. 2 others hoist it with ropes that run through a groove in the upright timber. The spikes scrape against the bones in his wrists, and the shifting weight of his body tears the skin and muscles in his arms, but he does not cry out. He buries a moan instead deep within his chest. A soldier on a ladder steadies the crossbeam into the notch of the upright. As the beams are jostled into position, they scrape the open wounds on Jesus' back. The pain is excruciating, but the only anesthetic is the gritting of his teeth. The bored holes in each beam are aligned, and a peg is driven through both to join the timbers. Once the crossbeam is secure, Christ's right leg is put over the left, and the spiker drives a single nail through both feet. His face winces to record how far the pain has traveled and how deep. He opens his eyes and sees a few soldiers and the spiker milling around below. Father, forgive them. The 3 words impale them as forcefully as the 3 spikes they used to impale him. They all look up, transfixed, as Jesus finishes his prayer, for they know not what they are doing. Not only does Jesus ask his Father to forgive them, he offers a kind word in their behalf, explaining their behavior. The calloused ears of these soldiers have heard all kinds of words on that hill, all kinds, and in every language. But they have never heard words like these, never like these, not once, until now. A chasm of silence opens between the men, separating them from each other. An awkward moment for men used to loud talk and coarse language. In the quiet of that moment, Jesus closes his eyes. As the soldiers return to their stations, Satan returns to his. He is more cunning this time around. Instead of coming out in the open, he voices his temptations through the traffic of onlookers passing by the cross. They are his mouthpiece, sounding almost as an echo from those windswept hills in the wilderness 3.5 years ago. The serpent of old coils to strike, yet he knows the heel he strikes could crush him if he's not careful. He delights in seeing God's Son suffer, yet he fears what that suffering could accomplish. So one last time, his cold-blooded adversary slithers toward the Son of God with hissing contempt. The first temptation comes through the religious leaders. He saved others, let him save himself if he's the Son of God, the chosen one. Jesus could do that. Save himself and show the religious establishment that he truly was the Messiah, the chosen one, the promised seed of Eve through whom the curse of Eden would be reversed, the promised seed of Abraham through whom the entire earth would be blessed, the promised heir of David's throne through whom the kingdom of God would come. So many promises converge at this cross, and maybe there was still a chance, even at this late hour, that they could come true if only Jesus would save himself. But their sneers are met only with silence. And soon the rulers lose their taste for blood and leave. Then one of the men curses Jesus and mocks him with a second temptation. If you are the King of the Jews, save yourself. Jesus opened his swollen eyes and sees the blur of men below. What stories these eyewitnesses could tell their superiors if he did come down and save himself. What evangelists they would make. What revival would break out in Rome. How Christianity would flourish under government protection. How legislation would change under Christian influence. It would be an unparalleled opportunity if only Jesus would save himself. But Jesus doesn't save himself. He doesn't even save his dignity. He offers no defense, makes no reply. Seeing little sport in his silence, the soldiers move on to the next cross, but Satan does not move with them. He stays to work out another strategy. Since he couldn't appeal to Christ through the religious leaders or the Roman soldiers, maybe he could reach him through one of the robbers. Since Christ knew what pain the man was going through, maybe the dying man's suffering would soften him. Aren't you the Christ? Save yourself and us. Slowly, Jesus turns his head to see the man who insulted him. He sees eyes that are lit with anger. Anger at life for bringing him here, anger at Rome for putting him there, anger at Jesus for leaving him there. How simple it would be for Jesus to ease the burn in the soul that inflames this man's eyes. He has done it so many times before. He thinks of the Gerasene demoniac and the fire he extinguished when he expelled the demons from the desert of that man's soul. He thinks, too, of the woman at the well and how the living water he offered quenched the desperate thirst in her soul. He can stop the fire in this man's soul, too, and the fever in his wounds and the man next to him. If only Jesus would save himself and us. But Jesus knows something the man hanging next to him doesn't. He knows he can choose one or the other. He can save himself or he can save us. But he can't do both. In spite of how much pain he was in spite of how tired he was, how weak, and how alone, he had the strength to choose us. It was the struggle of the wilderness that prepared Jesus for the sufferings of the cross, giving him the strength not to give in, the courage not to come down, and the selflessness to save us instead of himself.
From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a staff, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he was the Son of God." Many women were there, watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. As evening approached, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who had himself become a disciple of Jesus. Going to Pilate, he asked for Jesus' body, and Pilate ordered that it be given to him. Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. He rolled a big stone in front of the entrance to the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting there opposite the tomb.
Pilate's bar. Not a word, not a word, not a word. They led him to Pilate's bar. Not a word, not a word, not a word. They led him to Pilate's bar, but he never said a mumbling word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. They all cried, crucify. Not a word, not a word, not a word. They all cried, crucify. Not a word, not a word, not a word. They all cried, crucify. But he never said a mumbling word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. We nailed him onto a tree. Not a word, not a word, not a word. We nailed him onto a tree. Not a word, not a word, not a word. We nailed him onto a tree, but he never said a mumbling word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a word. Not a word, not a word, not a my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me, from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried and were rescued. In you they trusted and were not put to shame. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me. They wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. Yet you are he who took me from the womb. You made me trust you at my mother's breasts. On you was I cast from my birth, and from my mother's womb you have been my God. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, and there is none to help. Many bulls encompass me. Strong bulls surround me. They open wide their mouths at me. like a ravening and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, it is melted within my breast. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death.